Democratic Party had resolved to maximize constitutional authority in order to ensure that this does not occur, or particularly at least try to ensure that it did not occur. However, they refused that, maybe through bipartisanship, maybe through some sort of expecting for Republicans to do the right thing, which is a stupid strategy. Obviously, decorum wanting to position this within the right channels, de jure wanting the courts to be the ones to decide, wanting the Congress to be the ones to decide, not maximizing on the actual constitutional channels. This is why Joe Biden, 2 days before swearing, he said, hey, the Equal Rights Amendment is law. However, he didn't actually tell the archivist to publish it. And he didn't have to, but then who's going to tell the archivist to publish it? No one, apparently. So in this reality, everyone's waiting for someone else to do something that no one has told them to do because there is no instructions as to how this would work, because the Constitution is incomplete. It is full of ambiguity. As a result, the political elite have used this in order to deteriorate our governance, in order to misalign us to our constitutional foundations. As a result, they've been able to hijack the system and produce what has been produced, and through a channel in which Democrats themselves have allowed for them to infect our system, to infect our republic, and to overthrow it. Now, I don't think all Democrats did this knowingly. However, they were gullible enough to do it. Why? Because they refused to maximize on constitutional authority. Rather, they were in alignment with a legal threshold they believe was the ceiling, when in fact it's not. We know this because Article 6 Supremacy Clause. Now, people normally think that this just means that the federal government is above the state authority, right? This is true in a normal jurisdiction. However, it's also important to understand how the United States government historically has positioned Article 6 Supremacy Clause in order to withhold Americans from accountability in international crimes. They basically say that because we have Article 6 Supremacy Clause, it means that not even the United States government, even though we really want to be fully part of the treaties that we sign, can override the Constitution. So the fact that the Constitution says the Constitution is the law of the land, it means that no other jurisdiction, including international law, can override that. So in order to mend this, we said we're going to include some international crimes in American penal codes so that we ourselves can hold them accountable and you don't have to, right? Obviously, this has not worked. It works sometimes. For instance, some military were held accountable for the abuses of Abu Ghraib, but no have been held accountable for the abuses of Guantanamo Bay. This is because you gotta give some to the international community so that they don't get mad. But in general, you can position that American law is in a way above international law because the Constitution, as an American, is above anything else. And this is where I get the reality that nothing can subvert the Constitution. And we know this because of Federalist 78 through 83. And you're going to say, well, that's not the Constitution. Yes, but Article 6 Supremacy Clause tells us as much. And also Article 6, Section 3, which binds the state governments and all agencies to an oath to the Constitution. So in this reality, the government itself positioned the Constitution as the highest contract that cannot be subverted by any government in general. With this said, it's offensive when the Democratic Party positions that they have no resolve, or that they had no resolve, because yes, they did. They just didn't maximize constitutional resolve. And that's what offends me, because although I have to kind of move myself back and understand that these politicians don't have a background in international law, so they probably don't know that although in American justice that is obedience to superior orders, when it comes to the totality of how America is in existence, it is the Constitution, not the judge or not the president, that is superior orders. So if the president says something that is against the Constitution, all other checks and balances should be like, nope, you cannot do that. But that's not working. That means we're in a constitutional crisis. Constitutional crisis does not mean that one branch isn't working. It means that all three branches aren't working. It means that they failed to bring a resolve. It means that they are not resolving this because there's some sort of shortcomings on their power and they're incapable of reaching a resolve that can actually fix what's the problem. And the issue here is that I don't think that whatever plan Democrats have has been their plan A. I think so many plans have happened and they didn't come to fruition. So now they're kind of stuck on being creative with what to do, but they're not maximizing because they don't want to go outside of tradition and they want to have integrity, right? They're the Democratic Party, so they don't want to object against a democratic choice. However, guarantee clause says that even through the democratic choice, you cannot have a monarchy, you cannot have a tyranny, you cannot have anything but a republican form of government that is guaranteed through our constitution. So how is it that we have someone who is positioning himself to be above the constitution? It's because the branches have a lot for him. It doesn't mean everyone in it, but it means they're all complacent and it's auto coup. In our reality, it's offensive that our politicians just want to act like it's business as usual. And as a result, Americans are normalizing this, saying, hey, it's only 2 years, 4 years. No, it's not. Why do you think that the South Korean president was impeached? Do you think it was because the politicians were like, hey, we need to impeach him because he tried to do martial law? No, it's because South Koreans went out and were like, you got to impeach him. They weren't going to impeach him first, but then South Koreans were like, well, you better do it again. You're going to impeach him. And eventually they did. Now you're going to say, well, martial law. Well, would you rather have that or would you rather be in a fascist regime for what, 20 years, 70 years, your whole life? Because at this rate, that's what we're going to. Resistance isn't optional when the one heading the state believes he is above the social contract that was the promise that was granted to us in the first place. We exist as natural guardians to the United States Constitution. The Citizens Almanac says this as much. We are as much an oath to defend the Constitution from enemies foreign and domestic. This includes any who intends to usurp our social contract. Yet here we are with no branch seemingly capable of creating any resolve, but also saying, hey, this is normal, nothing's here, nothing's wrong. And we know that's not true. We know that's not true because he's breaking down the Constitution every single day. And they're going to try to just use litigation. But the problem isn't just litigation. It's not just his policies. It's the one creating the policies. If I lived in a village and there's this well that's making everyone sick, I can either continue to give them treatment, right? But they're going to continue getting sick because they're still drinking from this well that's really dirty, that's really not working, right? So I can continue giving medication, but that's just curing the symptom. It's not actually curing what's bad, right? Or I can fix the damn well. You see, Democrats aren't fixing the well, and that's the problem. They're trying to treat it through traditional channels that have failed us in general. Litigation, yes, it'll be temporarily lifted for whatever, but it's going to be appealed. It's going to go to whatever. It's going to eventually go to SCOTUS. And this blind trust and faith and this checks and balances that aren't even real, because technically, who checks Congress? It's the people, but the people aren't recognized in the Constitution. As a result, we cannot get them out until the next election. They can, like, unalive someone and we cannot get them out unless Congress is like, that's really bad. We're probably going to get you out. But that's questionable because no party wants to get their own person out. That's why Amendment 14, Section 3 was so vague. It's so vague. It's so unhelpful because neither wanted to be like, hey, I know that my person can count under this, and I know that can be arbitrary, so let's make this as vague as possible. But as a result, now we're here. So I feel like the government is just playing games with us so that we can normalize a reality that they could have prevented but didn't. So now they're gaslighting us into thinking it's our fault. Like, they're like, oh, it's the voters' fault. No, well, why didn't the Democratic Party exist as a party worth voting for? All right? That's the question. It is the responsibility of the Democratic Party to get voters to vote for them, not the other way around. And the DNC has this kink with keeping us hostage in a risk situation, in a really terrible situation, so that we have the desperation to just vote in any lesser two evils. But what has that gotten us? Trojan horses. Because then we just vote blue no matter who, but then those blues can be Trojan horses. They don't vet their own candidates, and that brings much more distrust in the party. The Republican Party is more unified in doing evil things than the Democratic Party is in doing progressive things. The only solution for, especially after dissolution, isn't to trust Congress to fix it because they broke it in the first place. Only we can fix it, and that's going to require thinking non-traditionally, legally, and what's something that's would do that. That is a constitutional convention. That's what we require to fix this. Nothing less. Nothing more. Rebuilding.